first 12 verses of Matthew 5. And this weekend we're beginning a series called Flipped, which is going to be a journey through arguably the most influential, scandalous, inspiring, troubling, and transforming teaching the world has ever heard. It is commonly referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. And the sermon was given by Jesus Christ to his disciples and the crowd around them about 2,000 years ago. And the teaching of Jesus was so radical because it confronted a worldview. It confronted a way of thinking, a perspective that's actually the dominant way for human beings to think. It's the most natural way for us to think about life. And Jesus confronted it. And here's the thing in this sermon that you're going to hear over the next few weeks. Jesus didn't just try to sit at the table and come up with a compromise when it came to issues like forgiveness and justice and power and money and relationships. The sermon that he preached was like a collision with opposing values where, when all the dust settles, only one ethic can define reality for you and me, and we actually get to choose. Jesus did not sit there in compromising ways and said, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. What you're going to hear today and then over the next number of weeks is something that comes right up against the values of this world, the values that we find even just so natural to live in. And Jesus confronts us with his teaching. He gets right up in our face in one sense and says, listen, you have to decide which ethic is going to define reality for you and for your family and for your community. The words of Jesus in this sermon actually flip our perspective from looking at how things appear to be to seeing how things really are in the kingdom of God. That's what you're in store for over the next number of weekends. And I hope you're up for the adventure. I hope you're up to be troubled a little bit, to be shaken up a little bit, to be encouraged and be blessed for sure. It will be worth it to be part of the services over the weekends to come, and I hope you'll be here for that. And join us online if you can as well. So let's dive into the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, verses 1 to 12. It says this. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Church, this is the word of the Lord today. Now before we go any further, let me set up some context to Jesus' teaching, because there's a reason he is where he is and saying what he's saying. Let me set up the context. In the 1st century AD, there existed a small group of men, not men and women, all men, which you just know, that's the start of some trouble. All men together, no women to influence well there, that's just trouble. So all these men are together, and they were widely revered as being the spiritual religious elite of their day. They were the unchallenged superstars of spirituality. They raised religious fervor to an art form. And they were known as a group called the Pharisees. Some of you may have heard of that term before. If you haven't, just hang on to that title, the Pharisees. We're going to be talking about them a little bit. This group of Pharisees, this group of men, were absolutely fanatical about the observance of the law. There was something called Torah. And Torah is this Hebrew word for the law. It's the communication, the revelation of God to people before Christ about how they could relate to him and to one another. Now the issue with the law is that it was perfect. If anything, it revealed God's holiness and revealed our sinfulness and identified this huge gap between how holy God is and how sinful we are. But these Pharisees, they just became so devoted to this law. They became so devoted to the observance of it because they believed that the blessing of God, which is called shalom, is this Hebrew concept of complete peace, not just the absence of conflict, but a peace of heart, peace of mind, peace of soul that invades every part of your life. They believed that the shalom of God, the blessing of God, the blessed life came only through and was reserved for only those who lived with almost absolute perfection when it came to the law. They put the bar of spiritual expectations so high that the average man or woman would say of these religious elite, they would say, I could never compete in religion against these guys. I'd have to quit my job. I would have to bail out on my family just to have enough time to observe all the things they're saying, to obey all the rules that they've put into effect, which they're telling me makes me right with God, answers the call of my heart for relationship with Him. So many hoops. The bar is so high. People are saying it's a weight, it's a burden that we can't carry. And so there are lots of men and women who had sort of given up on the religious system of the day. Let the Pharisees look after it. And even though part of their heart, like every human being on earth, part of their heart wanted to be right with God. I mean, what it took, according to the system, what it took was more than they could give. It was too much. And as you might have guessed, the Pharisees took kind of this perverse delight in their spiritual elitism. But not only were people living under the spiritual oppression, there was a political oppression going on as well. You see, they were being ruled under the thumb of the Roman Empire. Years before, Rome had kind of rolled in as they were all